The idea of tending to employees' well-being is paramount to a business's success. Many leaders will say people over profits. I get the sentiment behind it, but what does that actually mean? Where are you investing in your employees' well-being? Because if you want the most out of your employees, you need them to be whole with themselves. They have to be centered with themselves first in order to show up for the rest of the organization. So to me, it's like, why wouldn't you tend to the care of your people?
Welcome to the Optimized Workplace, where our discussions and conversations with influencers and experts, as well as innovators, are helping transform the workplaces and workspaces of today's members. On today's episode, we are joined by the amazing Eileen Benwitt, a transformative leader with over 35 years of experience in building people-first cultures and promoting holistic well-being. She's a powerhouse, guys. I cannot wait for you to meet her. As the founder of Witt and Wonder and chief global ambassador of Leela Life, Eileen expertly bridges ancient Indic wellness practices with her modern living. Her insightful and genuine approach fosters meaningful conversations, helping individuals explore their vulnerability and align with their authentic selves. Our topic for today is the significance of holistic approaches to workplace well-being, which, let's face it, that is so needed right now. We're on the cusp of real change and transformation. And I think, as you have said, the holistic piece of that, Eileen, is so important. And the necessity of embedding employee wellness into the heart of organizational culture. So we'll discuss how prioritizing well-being can lead to a more engaged, productive, and satisfied workforce, ultimately driving organizational success. Eileen, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Fran. It's so great to be here.
Well, I want to dive right into it. This is a topic that's really, really dear to me. It's at the core of what we do here at Aerobodies. And I know that you believe that too, as a transformative expert. So let's talk first about just the culture, the culture and where it sits, where well-being sits in the culture of an organization. And what is the role that you think leadership plays in promoting a culture of well-being?
Well, I love the conversation and I love the question. And I think it's a really dynamic space to be able to discourse about, particularly now when everything is on its head, everything is changing. And so now more than ever before, and I think I've said that at different touch points over the past several years, but really now more than ever before, the idea of tending to employees' well-being is paramount to a business's success. We hear a lot of times, many leaders will say people over profits. Mm-hmm. I get the sentiment behind it, but like, what does that actually mean? You have no people, you have no profits. So where are you investing in your employees' well-being? Because if you want the most out of your employees, you need them to be whole with themselves. If they're not centered with themselves and they have, let's just use the word imbalances, and an imbalance can be anything from stress to burnout to not sleeping to health issues to not getting along with their team, they have to be centered with themselves first in order to show up for the rest of the organization. And if you're distracted by any sort of, I'll use the word imbalance, you're not getting the most out of your employees. So you're not getting the highest value on your investment if your people are distracted. So to me, it's like, why wouldn't you tend to the care of your people?
I love that. Let's back up a little bit, though, because I want to set the stage with the audience as to who is Eileen Benwitt and how you came at this work. You've been in it for so long. What brought you into this work and where do you see it going in your career?
I was very fortunate to work for somebody by the name of Bill Konigsberg, who is the CEO and founder of Horizon Media, where I've spent the past 20 years as the chief talent officer. And being a privately owned company and a very dynamic organization and working for a leader who gave me the space to create the culture that I thought made sense and was most relevant for the organization. Mm-hmm. And for me, what drives me is the sense of relevancy. There's nothing worse than just putting out textbook ideas, off-the-shelf concepts, but really understanding who's your client. And as an HR leader, the client is the organization. It's our people. What matters to them? What's trending in the industry? And what's just generally trending, and how do we create an environment that is relevant to our people? So that was sort of front and center for me, but also the beauty that I had in working in this environment was the ability to bring what was my passion. And my passion was holistic well-being and making sure that I felt good, because the ability to do my job, if I was off, if I was imbalanced, I couldn't do it. And so I was able to transfer that into the culture for the benefit of everybody else. And because it's not a one size fits all, I very much believe in this idea of bio individuality, that what works for me is not going to work for you, which isn't going to work for the next person. So let's create an environment of opportunity and experiences where people can show up with their whole selves and get as much enrichment, not only from the work, but from the experiences and ways in which they can contribute to the culture.
Woo, that's a lot to unpack,
And
Eileen.
it
I
was a
love
lot to, it was a
it.
lot to say, but yeah.
Well, you said some couple of things that I want to kind of go dig a little bit deeper on. I love this term, bio individuality. I think that's absolutely 100% accurate, that people do need to be able to feel individualistic, even though they're coming into a culture and there's a mission and a vision to that culture, 100%. And I also think that, again, looking at the current landscape, what is it, February 6th, 2025, if you haven't been noticing what's going on with workplaces and just the state of the economy and corporations in the United States, and you're living under a rock right now, and employees are scared and nervous, and so are reacting to that. But I think there's a third piece to what you just mentioned. I'm getting to a question, I promise, which is, yes, we want people to feel individualistic, but bringing their whole self to work could be opening a can of worms that the employer is not yet ready to take on, because they haven't really prepared their workforce, their managers, just the temperament overall, to be able to handle some of those issues. So, you've got this almost like trifecta again. Like we can't, we during the pandemic, we were dealing with certain things post-pandemic, and now we've got this trifecta once again, not to mention all the, the things that are happening with inflation and the economy and the challenges that people are having around that and finding the right job and all of that. So, putting back on that lens for a moment of the chief talent officer, I think you come at this work with a very unique viewpoint, because you have lived the life of ensuring that you've got the right talent in the organization and the investment in that human capital, and the opposing need of the employees and getting that balance right, so it's working for everyone. So how does a company truly approach that in a way, in that kind of construct that makes sense and that is able to help them continue to be successful? How do they really approach that?
Right. It's not easy. I mean, let's just be honest. It's not easy, and it's imperfect. I think, it takes a certain type of a certain level of curiosity and openness to be able to lead in this way. But the fact is, whatever's happening in the environment, in the world outside of an organization, as you just described, it's happening inside. Like I don't believe you can separate. So people are reading, they're experiencing what's happening in their lives outside the walls of their organization, but it's just the organization is sort of a microcosm of what is. And so if you can accept that as an idea and a belief, then it's like, okay, what responsibility do we actually have to support our organization? I think a lot of times people say that has to start at the top, and I think it's yes, it can start at the top, but I also think the organization has to create, I'll say, like a container of space and openness for people to bring what they want to an organization and not be threatened by it. But the challenge is, as you said, there's a lot of fear.
There's a whole lot of fear. Yeah.
There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of uncertainty. The change is happening faster than the human psyche can process. And so I think it's beholden on companies to, one, recognize what's happening and understand that there's a huge opportunity to provide support, coaching, services, creating that container to be able to support the employees through all that's happening. And to shut it down And there are companies that say, we're not talking about politics in the art. Like we're not going to bring the outside in. There are companies who believe that. And I think it's clean, it's simple or simpler. It self-selects out certain types of people. And that's one way in which you can lead an organization. For me personally, that feels sort of very antiquated and starts to compartmentalize people. And I don't think that's in the best interest of your bottom line to do that. So when you try to think about the investment you're making in your people, what are the hard benefits, the financial benefits? And they're real, hard to quantify for sure. I think that's a challenge. But if you're getting the most from your people and creating this space, of course, you're going to have better client retention. You're going to have more collaboration. You're going to have more innovation, which is going to impact your bottom line. And you can start to minimize the angst and the fear.
If you are enjoying this segment or any of the segments that you've heard thus far on the Optimized Workplace, please be sure to join us here below and just follow us on the Optimized Workplace. We really want to not only drive our viewers and listeners, but we also want to share it. So if there's others that you know, like us, please here, join and listen, subscribe on a regular basis, but also share the podcast. We'd love to have you back. You know, as you were speaking, thank you for that. I was curious, what do you believe is the next big shift that we're going to see as all these kind of, again, policy changes and pressures that employees are feeling? We've seen different shifts over the last couple of years. What do you believe to be true about the next shift we're going to see in the, corporate employee environment?
It's a big question. I think what's happening right now is we're going a little backwards. I think that's going to be a short-term shift because I think there's this disruption happening in the world. And I'll use COVID as a perfect example. COVID was a tragedy. It was horrific, but it was also beautiful at the same time. Mm-hmm. And there was so much beauty that came as a result of that. And I think it was nature's way of saying, hold on, like this ain't working anymore. We got to take a step back and reset what's important, what matters, where we've lost the sense of authenticity, we lost the sense of integrity. And that was the beautiful result of a tragedy. But now we've, several years forward, we're sort of losing the benefit of what I think we all gained from that. And I think it's going to take a certain type of organization and a certain type of leader to recognize that and be okay letting go of what was in order to create what's possible. And to me, that really excites me because it's a beautiful time to be able to innovate and create what's possible in, again, going back to what we said earlier, that sense of relevancy. Mm-hmm. The relevancy today is not what it was 4 years ago. So let's take stock in what that is and then build for the future. Now, I have a bias towards well-being, so I think there's a huge opportunity to create a culture of well-being in a very different way than what has been. Before, it has been very benefits insurance-driven, but thinking about the bio-individuality of people, let's bring in wellness directors. Let's bring in a different skill set to elevate the employee's well-being. And I'm going to make it might be a bold statement. It might not be a popular statement, but I don't think HR is equipped for the current times as they are.
It's so funny that you said that. I was recently at a SHRM event and heard an official from SHRM speak, a very high level official. And he talked about just that, the fact that many of our HR leaders, unfortunately, do not have and have not kept up the relevancy of what's coming next in their skill set and the old model in terms of how we manage people and what was necessary in terms of not just talent management, but so many other, things, benefit management they're kind of out the window, like you said before, which kind of leads me to this question around, your approach or approaches that you've seen to well-being in the workplace. How can organizations ensure that the programs that they want to bring in around well-being are inclusive and equitable for all? And if you can kind of go a little bit further on that whole theme that you were talking about before about chief wellness officers and senior
Mhm.
leadership and things like that?
I think the first thing is that it's not HR's responsibility,
Mm.
which is, again, it might be a bold statement to say. I
Yeah,
think
I haven't heard anybody say that ever on this stage. So this is great.
okay, well, here it is, the first time. Here it is, first. But it's true. I mean, think about it. We all have a responsibility to contribute to the cultures that we're a part of. It doesn't have to come from HR. Yes, that's where it typically, is led from. But I think we, as again, going using that bio-individual term, we each have a responsibility to do our work, our self-work, in order to contribute to the culture that we want to be a part of.
Mhm.
How you do that, I think it's a challenge, but it can't just be a top down. It can't just be a program, because I think what's happened is that things have become way too transactional, and it just
Mhm.
becomes like a check. We have a program, we have an app. We've said we've done this type of training. It comes and it goes. It doesn't have the level of stickiness or sustainability and transformation that I think we all want. And the
Mhm.
only way to make that happen is, they say it's like an inside job. It's an inside job. We all have to show up and think
Yeah.
about, how do we want to show up? How do we want to be experienced? What do we want to experience? How cultures and how organizations can do that, I think it's taking the dollars probably and committing it in other ways. And maybe it is through coaching and group coaching. Obviously, I have a bias. I'm a big fan of coaching. I know that it works.
Mhm.
And if you really want sustainable change, you have to get at it on an individual basis.
Yeah, but the problem is so many organizations aren't willing to make the investment.
I know.
They don't want to make the investment. They don't see it's. I don't even believe that they don't see the wherewithal of it. It's just that they feel like those monies should be channeled somewhere else. And I know we could talk about that all day, but I think until that mindset changes to a large degree for leadership, then you're going to continue to have that problem. Because again, coaching can make a huge impact on organizations, right? But so often, it's
Right. It's considered soft.
yeah, absolutely,
Right?
absolutely.
It's not, and I think companies right now, look, I said this is not easy. Like, it's absolutely a hard challenge. I
Mhm.
think companies are trying to reset themselves to embrace the changes that AI is creating, right? And so it's like FOMO. It's like a different kind of FOMO
Yeah.
that organizations need to keep up with the technology advances as we see them unfolding,
Mhm.
and it's very expensive to do that.
Oh,
So it might be, it's going to take some years in order to see this evolution, but I think the leaders who will get it will lead the path, and then others will follow. And it's going to take some time, and it's going to take some, real trailblazers to lead the way. And I think it's possible, because what else is there? Like, if you don't,
exactly. So
I
that's
mean,
what I was going
like,
to say. Well, what other alternative do we have? I mean,
exactly.
we see the crises across the landscape. So what other choice do we have? So let's pivot a little bit now, and I'd love to talk just a little bit more about your organization, and if there's any special projects or anything you have for 2025, or anything that you're working on in your organization that you'd like to share with our audience.
I'm working on a couple of things, but it's mostly really finding my voice. And
Mm,
one of the things that I've been doing a lot of writing. And what I struggle with is this sense of Me Tooism,
mm.
right? And what I mean by that is, there's so many influencers out there. There's so much happening. The space is like oversaturated, in my opinion, with a lot of people who have a lot of things to say.
And are you talking about the well-being space specifically, or just
Well, I
the
could I could
lot of
say everything, but let's just
yeah,
focus, narrow it down into the well-being space. And
okay,
I see so much that's out there,
yeah.
and I'm like, well, why am I listening to that? Who's this person? Who's that person? What makes that person right? What makes that person? Why should I follow that person? I personally find it a little overwhelming, and I'm struggling with, where's my voice in all of this space, because I feel like I have something to say, but yet I don't know where I want to be in this culture, I guess is the best way to say it. So it's really taking the time to honor my own voice and the authenticity of what I want. And then I think people will start to attract to that. And then it'll start to create a different sort of space. So I can't tell you exactly what that is yet, but that's what I'm sort of trying to allow myself to unfold in a way.
I think that's a great place to be in. And enjoy the journey, right? Because sometimes you get to the destination and you're like, oh, this was it.
Well, I think and then you get there and you're like, still something is missing, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I know in our case, or at least in my case, 27 years this year with Aero Buddies, and we've done a
Wow.
lot of different things, made a lot of impact. But I think what I've enjoyed the most is the journey and the people you meet along the way and the stories you learn and the lives you changed. I mean, that's so much more important than the final destination to me. So I think you're in a really fantastic place.
Thank you.
Curious, what do you do, Eileen, for your own self-care and
So,
nurturing of self
and what's that?
and nurturing of self?
Self.
Yeah.
So I have this amazing Bernedoodle. And she's this fantastic, big, fluffy 60-pound dog. I need to be in nature. And so I started this during when COVID hit and when everybody was, working working from home. I made a decision, like, I'm not having a meeting before 10 o'clock.
Hmm.
That's my line. It's like, it's a non-negotiable. And if it doesn't work, well, we'll have to figure something out, and I spent every morning in the park for like an hour or two. And I mean, I'm an athletic person. So I used to be a runner and a biker, but I don't do that anymore. But I need to be in nature. So every day I am in the park with my dog. It doesn't matter how cold it is. I bike all around the city. I don't take the subway unless I absolutely have to. Doesn't matter how cold it is. I'm on a city bike. That's my means of transportation.
Oh,
And
I love that.
and I swim.
Oh, I love that. That
And
is
in
so
fact, I did for the very first time, I participated in the Coney Island Polar Bear Plunge on New Year's Day this year.
Oh my gosh. My husband did it in Chicago. You guys are crazy.
Crazy. I love it. I'm going to do it every year now.
Are you serious? How cold
Mhm.
was it?
Well, I kind of got lucky because it wasn't crazy cold. I mean, the water temperature was about 45 degrees.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
cold. And it's
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
cold.
But how cold was it outside? Like
It was somewhere between like 47 and 50,
ugh,
but the sun wasn't out. It
yeah.
wasn't as Arctic as it has been. Like if it was 20 degrees, maybe I would be telling you a little bit of a different story.
Yeah. Yeah. But I love it. I mean, there's so much research around, right? The cold plunges and, cold bathing and all that kind of stuff. It was 10, I think 12 below, he said in Chicago. Yeah. Yeah. But he
How
also runs into burning buildings for a living. So,
Okay, so he's
yeah,
wired a little
he's one of
differently.
those people. So,
Yes. Yeah. I love
you
it.
guys
It's
would probably
fantastic.
make great friends. This has been such a delightful conversation. I could talk to you all day.
This
I
is
love
great.
what you're doing. And I honestly, I really not only honor, but respect and really appreciate the fact that you're coming from the human resource, human capital industry and have embraced well-being. So if I could tell you
Thank
how many
you.
stories I've had with HR people that, it's like, "Rah, rah, rah, rah." So the fact
It's changing. I
I
think I
know.
think that I think like the departing point is like, let's embrace the change.
Yes.
Let's not be afraid of it. It's filled with
Mhm.
opportunity personally and professionally, and it's going to happen anyway. It's happening. You can't stop it. So
Nope.
it's an
Nope.
opportunity to sort of take a step back and say, what am I resisting?
Mhm.
And understand that for yourself and see what's in it for you, because there's a lot here that's just filled with opportunity.
Oh, I love it. This has been phenomenal.
Thank
So
you. No, it's so nice to spend this time with you.
continued success to you. Please keep the optimized workplace and myself
I
informed with
will.
changes and anything new you have going on. We'd love to be able to share it with our listeners and everything about Eileen and her coaching practice and what she's doing with corporations today will be in the show notes. So please be sure to check it out, everyone. Thank you so much,
Awesome.
Eileen, for being here.
Take care.
And thank you for joining us for the Optimized Workplace. Remember, I'm your host, Fran Dean-Bishop. And as I always tell you, it's many, that small, monumental moments in your day that make the biggest difference. Take care, everybody.